Following that last bracket, there's been a flurry of activity here amongst our audience of detectives. So let's consult our central computer again and see on whom the suspicion is now falling. We now have the Reverend Green with only 12, Miss Scarlett with 22, Mrs. White suspected by 42% of the audience. This... She looks absolutely astounded. Let's find out a little bit more about this mystery. Let's go back to Detective Sergeant Bogong to see a little bit more of his interrogation of the suspects.
I suppose it'd be pointless to ask who replaced it. And equally pointless to have it examined for fingerprints. It's probably been well wiped. However, the person responsible may not have realized one thing. The oil used to preserve these things is exceedingly fine, very penetrating, and has a very distinctive odor. Anyone handling this would still have traces on their fingers. So, I'd like to examine your hands.
Oh, is that absolutely necessary, Sergeant? You're treating us like criminals.
I'm afraid I have to insist.
There's no need for this, Sergeant. I'm the one who put the gun back. I took it in the first place to test it and make sure it was still capable of being fired.
Why?
I was going to load it. I was going to persuade Evelina to handle it. And I was going to make sure the damn thing went off.
Mike.
Are you saying you planned to kill her?
Very much so.
Then may I ask why?
You may ask, but I'm not going to tell you.
Mike, you were doing it for me.
Elizabeth, please. I took the gun and I loaded it. I tried to fire it. It jammed. It's obviously no good. So I put it back.
That's very interesting, Colonel. But anyone with motives as chivalrous as yours could quite easily confess in order to protect others. But what about you, Miss Scarlett? Did you have any plans?
No.
I suppose I could send this bottle in, have the contents tested.
Better still, Sergeant. Why don't you sample it yourself? It's liquid laxative. Just wanted to give the old witch a dose of what she gave me.
4 people admit that they wanted the deceased dead. 4 confessions which do nothing but exonerate those that made them. But somebody was killed. Somebody did murder her. What I have to ask myself now is if one of these confessions is in fact a clever cover-up for what really did happen.
Okay, let's ask these people some questions. Who's got a question they want to ask? Yes?
Yes, Miss Scarlett, so which room or rooms do the stairs lead to?
Well, the stairs go upstairs.
Now, come on, Miss Scarlett. You could be a little bit more cooperative than that.
They lead to the bedrooms.
Yes, and one right on the end.
Mrs. White, is there any chance that your husband can get better by having an operation?
I doubt it. It's a physical disability.
And you're not that interested, are you, really, Mrs. White?
Of course I am.
No, I don't wish to put any more suspicion on you. You've already incurred lots of suspicion from this audience.
Why?
One
I
more
can't
question from
imagine.
someone. Let's back here.
Professor Plum, what is your relationship with Miss Scarlett?
Vivian and I are very good friends in every sense of the word.
Okay. I think it's time for somebody to make an accusation. So we're going to pick somebody who's, let's see, what's your name? Anna. Anna, who do you think is the murderer? What do you think was the weapon, and in which room do you think the murder was committed?
Mr. Plum.
Mr. Plum. Professor Plum.
Yeah, sorry.
We're not sure he deserves that title, but Professor Plum.
The spider.
With the spiders.
Yep. And in the study.
In the study. Professor Plum with the spiders in the study. Not a very lucky guess, Anna, because you've got all of those wrong, I'm sorry to say. Okay, but that gives a clue to everybody else. That means that if you had any of those 3 elements, you are wrong. You can change your minds there. Let's take one more person. I might wander down here. Let's try you. Would you like to tell us who you think the murderer of the weapon in the room is?
Mrs. White.
Mm-hmm.
With the brick.
With the brick.
In the library.
Now, why do you think that?
I don't know.
You've got a great future in the police force there. Mrs. White, in the library with the brick. Well, I have to tell you that you've got one of those right. One of those selections is correct. Well, they've all got their thinking caps on now. Dials are furiously being flung around there. Let's come back and play a little bit more after this break. last segment has really set people to rethinking all their theories about this crime. Let's have a look at our central computer and see what people are voting at the moment. And looking at the computer, we see that 20% of the audience now suspect Miss Scarlett. 20% also suspect the Reverend Green. But our top suspect is still Mrs. White with 41% of the vote.
What an outrage! What?
Now, of course, Detective Stanley Bogong has a very clear idea of who committed the crime. So let's go back to Brindabella now to watch him conclude his own investigation.
What are you doing, Mrs. White?
Oh, something's left marks on my floor.
Hold it. Looks like dried blood. The bloodstains are spaced at exactly the same distance. 166 centimetres. Plum, what would be the diameter of a circle whose circumference was 166 centimetres?
53 centimetres.
Thank you.
Here we are.
Yes. 53 centimetres. A bloodstain.
Isn't that only to be expected, even though she was found on the floor, Sergeant? She was probably killed in the chair and then fell forward.
A very sound observation, Mr. Plum.
Thank you.
However, the bloodstains get fainter as they get closer and closer to the room, which means the blood must have been on the wheel when Santa came to distribute the presents.
That's impossible, Sergeant. That means that Evelina would have to have been killed before then.
It does.
But we saw her distribute the gifts.
Did we, Mrs. Peacock?
Well, Sergeant Bogong certainly seems to have some idea of who committed the crime. Let's take some more questions before we finally lock the computer up for the night and make our decision. Who's got a question? Someone down here? Yes.
Mrs. Peacock, how long have you known Colonel Mustard?
Oh, I've known Colonel Mustard for years, actually. I knew him before my late husband died. He used to be friends with him, and now he's been a great companion to me over the years.
Right, another question down here. Yes.
To Miss Scarlett, what room did Evelina change out of the Santa Claus costume?
To tell you the truth, I'm not sure. I was in the kitchen when she was changing.
One, yes, right here.
Mrs. Peacock, do you live at Brindabella?
Of course I do, darling.
And if the will, this new will, was implemented, would you have to move then?
Yes, I would.
So there's something of a motive there. Rightio, I think it's time for us to try another accusation.